So over the weekend, I don't think I've ever seen this before. I think this is the first time I've ever seen this. Over the weekend, user by the name of Alex Martin finished 1st through 9th, right? There were 3 games out of the 5 in KBO that got postponed, and it was all because of rain. It was awful. Some guys were able to catch this, take a leap of faith, and just with all their 150s or all their 100s or all their 75s, were able to stack as much as they can of the 2 games. Cool. For those of you that didn't, rip. I think you lost pretty big time. I saw on Twitter a bunch of guys going hambony on how bad the slate was. It was horrible. Man, I lost all my money. They should suspend the slate. Give me back my money. I need And it's just like, okay, chill. You made a mistake. Even in MLB, when there's rain, there's no games, right? So there was one game, you're right, the Doosan game was announced postponed 15 minutes before lock. If you switched out of that one in time, good job, you were paying attention. But for those that didn't, bobos, complete bobos. No idea what they're doing. And for those that did, congratulations, you paid attention. You know, it's really hard to pay attention at 5:30 in the morning when there's rain issues, postponement issues, and somehow you still get this right. This is what I would like to see from anyone that's, you know, paying attention at 5 in the morning. It's not the rain stuff. It's not the did you play 50% of the only team that played? No, it's how well you diversify your teams, right? Even when there's 5 game slates. Look at what Alex Martin did yesterday. The guy was fantastic. The guy was unbelievable. Look at what he did yesterday. 1 through 9th. This is a real tournament. 1 through 9 is real. This is not fake. This is not a dummy tournament. These are not bots. This is real life money that people won. In this case, one person won. All of them. How he did it, I thought, was even more fantastic. So if I go to his lineup specifically, and here, right here, you see all of his lineups only. I sorted only his lineups. I have how many 2-player stacks he used, how many 3s, 4s, and 5s. You see them right here on the right side. And if you were to actually pay attention to this, he ran 150 lineups in total. There's only 54 mans, and there's only 35 mans. So in 80 of his lineups, he ran 4s or 5s. But if you look at it a little bit closer and say, well, 3-mans and 2-mans are obviously mini stacks. They're the secondary stacks, which you can play with these, right? But if you look at him closely, he runs a little bit of 5-mans. He runs a little bit more of 4-mans. He runs a little bit more of 3-mans, and he runs 2-mans in almost everything. You know what I mean? And if you were to say and take a step back and say, well, this is interesting because if you were to say 5-mans are the most volatile stack, they're the most riskiest stack, which they are. More players, more risk. I should run those the least. 4 players are a little bit less risky. They're still risky, but they're a little bit less risky than 5s. I should run a little bit more of those, right? 3 players are way less riskier than 4-mans. I should run way more of those. And 2-mans are pretty much almost no risk. You're just playing what, you know, your projections give you. That should at least be default by minimum, right? I should play as many of those as I can. And when you look at it that way, it's just like, okay, well, that seems pretty dope. Let's say you go to and hypothetically speaking here, let's say you go to a window at a sports book, right? And you say you have $1,000 to play with. You're in that Draftkings tournament from a long time ago, the sports betting championship. They give you play money and you have all this stuff. Well, you know about your 8-team parlays. Let's say you have 4-team parlays. You say you have some 2-teamers, and then you have your bets you really like. Okay, when you go to the window, you're not gonna put all your 1,000 play money on just 8-team parlays over and over and over and over. You're just not gonna do that, right? You're gonna have some that are 8-team parlays, like a couple. You're gonna have a couple more. Say if you had 2 8-team parlays, you're gonna have 5 4-team parlays. You're gonna have, I don't know, 10 3-team parlays. You're gonna have your 2-teamers that you love. You're gonna have quite a bit of those. And then your straight bets that you love, you are going to be playing a ton of those. And you're gonna be putting most of your money on those single game bets or prop bets that you really like, that you find a ton of value in. This is kind of the same way, right? Where the risky stuff, you don't do a ton of. The less riskier stuff, you do a little bit more of. And you keep graduating as the stuff becomes a little bit more safer, if you will. You remember back in the day, my most hated model of all time. I hated this. When you first started DFS, you put 80% in cash games, you played 20% in GPPs. You guys remember that? You guys remember that in like 1999? People are probably still doing this, but I never did that. But the idea behind that is something that on paper seemed like it would work. It just takes too much time, and I'm way more of the risky type, so I never followed it. But if you were to follow this with stacks, it goes something along those lines. And if you were to see Alex's lineups yesterday or Saturday, you would see the same thing. Now you open the fives and you see, a good distribution. It's only the 2 games. You see it. You see the fours and it's only the 2 games, but still distributed. 3-man, same thing. 2-man, same thing. And when there's 5, all 5 games are playing, he still does the same thing. If you remember in other sports as well too, Brick does this as well. We've studied Brick a ton. Brick's around somewhere, but he does that in other sports too. Osimo does this in other sports as well too. And it's just like, well, maybe it's not that they don't like 5s or they like 4s better or they like 3s better, but if one's significantly riskier than the next one and the next one and so on, then maybe the way you diversify and the amount you're playing should show the same numbers we're talking about. Once that says, been doing this for the KBO, love the results so far. Fantastic. I actually love that. You think he crutched 3-2 and FC just naturally gave him 5s and 4s or did a few? No, I don't think so. Not when the numbers are this even. Not when there's 30 exact 5-mans, 50 exact 4-mans. No, I think he starts off with, I don't know if he starts with 5 or 3s or whatever, but he'll start with 5s first. He'll make 35s, then he'll make 54s, and then he'll make the rest 3 2s or 3 3s or whatever is given to him after. I can see something like that, right? I can see that. I can see him saying, I'm going to run my 5s today. I'm going to run my 4s today. I'm going to run my 3s today. I'm going to run way more 3s than I do 4s and way more 4s than I do 3s. What does this do for you, right? What do you learn from this? You say to yourself, okay, well, if 5s go off, if there's a team that scores 15 today, I kind of have that covered. Because not only am I playing 5s, I'm exposed to every team with 5s. My 4s, 4s were middle of the road. Teams didn't score 15. Today they scored 8. The top 4 or the 2 through 5 did fantastic. And for this team and maybe this team, I have my 4s covered. And you know what? Today, nobody did anything. The pitchers were on. Stacks didn't score anything. Every game was like 6-3 or 7-2. My 3s were the ones that came through, but I have a ton of those. And those are always safe. The other thing you have to take into account anyway is when you have a lot more 3s than you do 5s, even if the 5s go ham, even if there's a team that scored 15, there's a team that went ham-bony. Dan Straley sucks. He pitched horrible. He went back to his Marlins days and they racked him. Even if that 5 did well against him, the 3s against him still did well too. So it's not like you're losing out a ton by playing only the 5s that did good against Straley. The 3s that did good against Straley did well too. And you have a lot of those as well too. You know what I mean? So it's not only that 5s can do well. 5s might win the whole thing, but your 3s against that same pitcher also did pretty well too. And you have significantly more of them than you do your 5-man stacks. You know what I mean? So when you take this whole approach into account, you say, not only are you covering different outcomes of games, which is what we should be aiming for in tournaments, you are also accounting for all the teams depending on how you diversify them, right? And you're giving yourself a good shot to bink the tournament no matter the outcome. If you remember the best quote that I keep telling you guys for MLB every single time, I remember asking someone this at a live final when I was very new to DFS. If you could give me one good piece of advice for MLB DFS, and they told me, embrace the variance. There's a lot of variance. Embrace the variance. I think Alex Martin right here, the way we're explaining it, is embracing the variance as much as you can. And I think he does it exceptionally well. Learn from this cat. Pretty darn good.